There we go. Halito. Great Grand Risings, everyone. We're live. Just going to wait for a few more people to get onto the line here. But this show today, again, is a part two. It's a live response to the little bit of a show that I put out about all uh, descendants, African descent should be all reparations should go to the country of Africa. That's what this one's all about. So I just want to wait for a few people to get in. Halato there, Red Bird. I really do appreciate you and everyone else who's on there. Um, a lot of interesting comments. I did this show specifically because I needed to be able to answer some questions, really even to myself, about this reparation stuff going to quote unquote African Americans and people relating it to a country of Africa. And it is it was quite interesting. The show was quite interesting, and the responses that I got back, which I want to read to you guys, is quite an interesting response. So that's why I wanted to have a live show about all reparations should go to the country of Africa. So, first of all, let's get a few housekeeping things straight. Uh, there is no country of Africa. Period. It was a parody on a few things. I was talking to some people that were outside of our race, and they were asking questions about a country of Africa. Where do black people really come from, etc. And there is no country of Africa. Period. The second thing I wanted to really get into is I mentioned that there are even some African nations that probably need to be paying reparations for selling their own slaves or their own people into slavery, which is probably true. But the question was asked, do you believe that all countries in Africa was involved in slavery? I mean, no. We have a lot of intelligent people out there, a lot of people asking a lot of intelligent questions. And this is a question that needs to be answered to everybody. Not all African nations were involved in slavery. In fact, a lot of the African nations were fighting for their lives because they were also being invaded by the Muslims at the time as well, right? So even a little bit before the invasions came from the Europeans, the Muslims were in there invading the country. And they also killed, hundreds of thousands and tens of millions of people, right? Tens of millions of people they killed. So what are the let's get to this first question. All reparations should go to Africa. For what? There is, again, Africa, the pseudonym name for Africa, was really the continent of Ethiopia, people burnt faces. Africa means conquered people, as we know by the Carthaginians and what happened with the Romans, Scipio Africanus, etc. So, all reparations should go to Africa. And no, I mean, there is no country of Africa, and there is no one place in Africa that is for African American people. We need to know exactly where we come from. If you are an African, we need to know where you come from, what country you come from, and again, why haven't they come to save us? Do you think all African nations were involved in the slave trade? To just answer that, no, I do not. Right, and again, like I said, they were being invaded quite a few times. One by the Europeans, by the Muslims, now what you call the Middle Easterns, and the Catholic Church had sliced down the whole half of the world due to the whole entire thing called the doctrine of discovery, which we'll have a show on. But no, not at all. There's another one. African Americans are actually pale skinned. African Americans are actually pale skinned. Well, that's another question that was on there. So, not exactly sure what that one means, but there are a lot of African American people, what you would call African American people, that are pale skinned. But, we are copper colored people of the Americas. That's what we are. We are indigenous to this land. That's what we are. We also know that there are anywhere between, I'll give a low estimate, 95 to 98% of the people were already here on this continent when they came. About maybe, again, I'll give a high estimate, 2 to 3 to 5% of the people that actually landed on this continent may have actually come from Africa. But, over a 500-year period, less than 300,000 people actually touched the shores of this continent, what we now call North America, which, again, comes out to about 86 people a year in each of the 13 colonies. So it is, when we're thinking about this and that question, about who we are as people, it's already there. A lot of things are already there. And again, no, I don't believe, well, you can't believe, because there is no such thing as the country of Africa. So if you call yourself an African American, you're saying that you're from somewhere. This, like, an Italian America, they're from Italy, a French American, right? A British American, a Haitian American. They all have a country that they're referring themselves to. And when we call ourselves an African American, my point here was to say, where's the country of Africa? Where is the conglomerate of beings that we come from there in Africa that's called Africa, right? Africa is, the country of Africa is non-existent, right? So some people can get that, some people can't get that. But when you begin to start identifying yourselves, you need to identify yourself with a real place, not a fictional place or fictional characters, right? That they taught us in our own history, right? Or who we are. We need to be, who we are. And I thank everyone else for coming in. Yep. Great Grand Rising all. And another one, someone like you comment. No, the whole point of the show is that there is no country of Africa, and that we as people need to begin to start understanding who and what we are, identifying us, and not allow somebody else to tell us what we do. We need to identify the mechanisms of our own healing, and not the mechanism of somebody giving it to us, where we're going to follow their prescription for healing. And those are the ones who basically try to either keep us in the state that we're in now, or enslave us internally, or even genocide us off the face of the earth. Can't just do that. So it's very important. Another one by Timekeeper, a scholar said, it's $1 trillion a day over 10 years. That's how much I agree. There is no amount of money that you can actually place on the type of reparations that we get. But the point is that there is no country of Africa. And as we were identifying ourselves as African-American people, it's a fictional made-up term to get us further away from who and what we are as beings of people, in terms of us being actually really indigenous or aboriginal to the land of this continent, right? And we have another one. One person started laughing and said, I understand now. He thought I flipped. No, did not flip. It is it's a conversation that we need to bring up and we need to have, right? It's just like no one's really talking about the doctrine of discovery. It's one of the first things that we're going to have to actually deal with when we're dealing with all this reparations and decolonization stuff. We have to deal with the doctrine of discovery, right? The doctrine of discovery, when you go way, way, way back to that, and when that first started, we'll begin to start understanding who and what you are. When you understand how the doctrine of discovery describes you on your own land, and how it was possible for the Europeans and the church to come and take that land, regardless of wherever it was, because that doctrine of discovery landed all over the whole entire, what we now call the earth, right? And it was Christopher Columbus who went to Spain and said, I can get you a part of this doctrine of discovery by going over there and claiming the lands of the West. That's what he told Queen Isabel when he was coming over here, and that's why they allow him to come with his flotilla of ships and his new friends, those two Moors, or how many other Moors that were on there. So we need to understand, what's really going on. So I just wanted to really give that little bit of a thing. A couple of more commented, the country of Africa. That person got it, started laughing. So we got one guy said, hold your own nuts. I don't know what that's all about. Just give it to China because China now owns Africa, which is true. China, we went through that with the whole what's going on in the Caribbean. China is investing themselves in a lot of different places where people don't really understand. Africa is not a country. Africa is not a country, which is really, another person was saying, dummy, whatever. So people are alive to thinking, and we need to bring this to the forefront and have a really good understanding of what we're talking about when we call African descendants of slaves, right? And we need to really put it in context. We also need to know that it's all a part of the same thing. It's 4 specific things. 3 to get us together. The first thing is that we need a skeleton to be able to go across this whole entire country, reestablish our communities in order for us to be able to work as one unit. That's the first thing that we need to do. That's what we're going around training people and teaching people, right? Not trying to take over anybody's communities, anybody organization, anything like that. Everybody's autonomous to themselves. The second thing is we have to deal with the war, the doctrine of discovery, how it all began, how it all first started, right? It goes beyond decolonization, but we'll get to that in just a second. We have to deal with the doctrine of discovery. That is where, when they were able to come and put 2 flags on the land, and then they took their 10 points of doctrine of discovery and began to start facilitating that. You end the doctrine of discovery, you end the war. The people, the Aboriginal indigenous to that land, need to be repatriated to that land, and the people who are in prison need to be let out and able to be on their own land as well. The third thing is decolonization. Decolonization takes precedent, because with decolonization, it tells the people who belong there, who don't belong there, and who has to leave. Right. Also gives you another area and way of being able to be self-sufficient and have a right to self-determination. And then the fourth thing that you can talk about is reparation, recompense, right? And the fixing of our society, because now that we have our fishbone structure that is in place, that is controlled by us, and that's why when we go out and we give our lectures, we teach people, we teach people the concept. We teach people how to do that. We give workshops, leadership workshop, and we tie into a whole bunch of others who are doing the exact same thing all around the country. So then that way we are operating as one being of people and not being separated by somebody, the bouye or anybody else who's coming by trying to pretend as though they're our leadership, paid by the system upon which it was trying to genocide us off the face of the earth. We have to be for ourselves. So those are the 4 things that we really need to do. And peace and light there, Ron Bird. Peace and light. Sheena Miles, also peace and light. Peace and light to all you guys. So this is what it's all about. This is what it's all about. So that's why I wanted to really have a live show. Anybody that had any kind of questions or anything else like that can actually really get into it. But, that show, African descendants of slaves, all reparations should go to the country of Africa, was to get you to think, what country of Africa? What country do I belong to? Should we get this money as individuals? They would love for us to get the money as individuals, because you have to remember one thing, and I make this one last point before I end. We are the last people on earth that the cabal, whatever you want to call the New World Order, these things that are in control of this earth, we are the last people on earth that has not been reconciled with everything that has happened. And universally, in all the laws that are going on, and if you know all the universal laws, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They cannot move forward until they reconcile and deal with the issue here of the indigenous Aboriginal people of what you now call the Americas, especially North America, because we have never been dealt with. They were going to deal with us in the 60s, but what they tried to do with the 1960 decolonization, UN decolonization situation, they were supposed to decolonize the whole entire earth. And what they did with us, and so much, people in Canada, I don't even think they really dealt with the Aboriginal, original indigenous beings up there at all. But what they did with us, to try to give us civil rights, right? They tried to replace that with decolonization and also and nobody's ever really dealt with the doctrine of discovery. No one's ever really dealt with that around the earth. War is still going on for all of us Aboriginal Indigenous people, no matter where we are. Let's get that straight, right? There are basically really two societies that really need to be on this earth in order for a justice system to really take place, and that is the Aboriginal Indigenous, wherever you may be, and their system that they have in place right now. So there's a lot, there's a lot to comprehend, a lot to think about. But this is what I really want to really get past people, is that there is no country of Africa. All you have, I don't care if you call yourself an African American and you really think that you're from Africa, or you know that you're from Africa, all you really have, if you've been here during that time of slavery, all you really have left is what's here on this land right now. You have this. This is it. There is no retreat. There's nowhere for you to go. Right? There's nowhere. I mean, they tried Liberia. You see what happened in Liberia, a total disaster, total mess when they brought a whole bunch of the Americans over there. A lot of people that came from Africa were also a part of originally North America in itself. A lot of people that came out of Africa were actually, what you'd call Hebrew people, and also people that were being sent out of Europe into Africa and then also sent on to the slave trade, as well as some of those more fortunate ones that came directly over from Ireland, Scotland, the British island over there, and off of the European mainland. Right, some of the more fortunate ones were able to come straight over into Canada and some of the other places. Right, New Scotia and all that other type stuff. Right, so we have to know our history, and we have to be able to teach our history, and this is the way that we have to be able to do it. So I just wanted to take a little bit of time, right, just to go over this American descendants of slave thing. You need to know the African descendants of slave thing, right? The word African they put in front of it. It should just be really not to separate anybody at all. It should just be descendants of slaves, right? Aboriginal descendants of slaves. That can go for everybody. That word Africa should not be in front of it at all. It doesn't have to be. I mean, you can put anything in front of it, whatever you want to be, but it should be Aboriginal. Aboriginal descendants of slaves. And that goes along with everybody. Aboriginal descendants of war should really be what it's talking about. Prisoners of war that were forced to go into free labor camps. Aboriginal descendants of war. That's what it should be. That's what it should be. That's right. Prisoners of war during colonization. That's right. So, I mean, you just can't use a simple phrase to describe it. I mean, because we're awake. And thanks a lot there, Timekeeper. I appreciate that. I mentioned some of your comments on this, so it's really, really crazy. But we have to understand that we are the prisoners of war. Whether you think you're from Africa, again, like I said, 2 or 3% of the people that landed over here are possibly from Africa and have African descent. But 90. And I'm giving low estimates. 95, 98% of the people were already here. Great Grand Rising, Timekeeper. Yeah, Great Grand Rising. So they're already here, right? So it is important for us to really get out there, get the message out, train our people, talk about it, because we need people to understand that it's not about the program that they put in our mind that is just African. It's Aboriginal, Indigenous. Who are we going to? How are we going to move? Are we going to go through census? Or are we going to become a nation or independent state? So those are really good questions. Let me answer those really right now. Again, before we can do anything, we have to invest into ourselves. We have to invest into our communities. We have to reestablish ourselves and rebuild ourselves. And we have to build a fishbone network all across the country of rebuilt communities that we can link ourselves in. Once we do that, right, and we begin to start reestablishing ourselves in that, we have our true representation of our Aboriginal, Indigenous, and even what you'd call African selves, right? We will have a true representation of us as beings of people. And that's what I say, us as beings of people, right? So that's the first thing that needs to happen. Then we, through the 1960s decolonization declaration, through the civil rights acts of the 1960s, between 64 and 68, through the Declaration Protection of Indigenous Beings or People, right, of 2008, 2010, I believe Obama signed around 2010, and the 2016-17 American Declaration Protection Act of Indigenous Peoples, right, gives us the ability to be able to reclaim who we are as Aboriginal Indigenous beings, and to also frame ourselves into independent governmental institutions. And we can do that individually. My thing is saying we're doing it as a collective. So we become a collective, reorganized of what we were before they came in 1492 and even before then. We reestablish ourselves as what we would call a country of people. Many nations, one flag. Many nations, one flag, one representation. We come together as one. You have to remember, we're all sovereign beings in our own right. We're all sovereign beings in our own right. Right? Yes, Redbird, I was thinking something similar. That's right. Right? So we're all sovereign and independent as individuals, as our own right. We don't have, and we really didn't go on or go off of leaders in the system that we came out of. We had a system that was in place that ran extremely well. And that system is the type of system that we're reestablishing, right? This concept of leaders and all this other type stuff is so that they can get you to be thinking as individuals. We have always thought as conscious, collective beings, right? And this is what it's really about. Respect relatives. That's right. Respect your elders and your relatives. And that's who we are as beings of people, right? So as we're bringing this together again, we have to bring ourselves in a situation as to where we can consciously begin to start healing our people subconsciously to replace that programming that was in us, so then that way we can actually come out of this healed beings of people, because every single one of us are damaged in some sort of way, right? Damaged in some sort of way. And the outside world really doesn't care. But that's the reason why we have to really get ourselves into situations to where we can create this boundary, this buffer zone. And that's through this fishbone structure, because every community has a responsibility of administering the healing to our people the way our community really needs it. Right? That's our families, our friends, our neighbors, the people that we work with, the people that we're combining with, right? So yes, we will become independent as a being of people. We will become independent as a state of people, because collectively, and this is the reason why we fill out the UN Declaration in triplicate. Right? The UN Declaration form saying that I declare myself to be Aboriginal, indigenous being of North America, or an indigenous being, what you classify yourself as. And then you also fill out a form, so then that way you can say that I believe that we should be, we are reclassifying ourselves as independent people. So the community organization will have one of those forms. INA will have one of those forms, and then you and your family each will have one of those forms, or even as a collective. So, this will begin to start giving us the process to be able to deal with them on their level internationally. I also think we call ourselves Oxygenized Americans to be means birth from. I agree 100%. And again, what I'm saying is again, I'm just laying down a foundation. And this is the reason why we're getting everybody together, because these words that they're using, that we're using, need to be infused into us. So if we don't call ourselves Aboriginal, Indigenous, we call ourselves I can't pronounce the word, but I understand what you're saying. AUTOCHTONOUS. We call ourselves that. We can put that on the paperwork, right? This is our census, right? Our census is to get tens of thousands, millions of people to fill out these forms, and then we can send those in triplicate to the UN, to the United States, and then we can begin to start declaring ourselves what we are. That from that point forward, they can never pay another preacher, another leader that they paid for, a politician or anything like that to represent us. We are now representing ourselves. And that's what it is. This is why we're out there giving the presentations, giving the training courses, and then drawing in people just like you to be able to help do that in your own community as well. And formulating a really good core group of people that have really decent hearts, decent souls. They aren't out there trying to use anybody, steal anything or anything else like that, but using the resources and the energy that we're getting in to help us move us forward, right? And we're always moving forward, right? How do we incentivize the rejection of the political worship of God and Jesus? What we concentrate on is moving forward, because what we're doing is right. What we're doing is a way that is constructive, right? So when people are using those words, God and Jesus, what they're really doing is they are internalizing externally the power of themselves that is coming from themselves, right? We know that our source energy is based in us. Our source energy is based in our mind and what we think. This is what we're calling in ourselves, and our power comes through that. So in order for us to be able to deal with a lot of these things, we have to be able to begin to start insulating ourselves from this outside world and begin to start administering the healing within inside of our reconstructed, our reestablished communities. So then that way we now have more control over our government, what we're teaching our children, where we're getting our history lessons from, how we're viewing our science, how we're buying our products, and how we're doing our economy. Remember now, one of the most important thing is the reason why I'm starting to push so hard is because in 29 years, our collective source of income, and I shouldn't be doing that sign. That's a bad sign. It's hard to say zero. Not this, zero, right? That's a bad sign. You see people doing that, man. That's a bad sign. So I just have to make sure you know that. Our collective combined median income is going to be zero in 29 years. We don't have any other recourse other than to reestablish our communities all over. There's a lot of good people out there talking about finance, a lot of good people talking about how to move forward in life and everything like that. But you're going to be, we have no choice when we begin to start looking at the reality of what's coming into our faces. We're at the tail end of our, how can I say, prosperity. Right now, we're worth collectively $1.6 trillion. You take all that taxes and stuff like that out of it. Collectively here in North America, in the Americas, we're worth about $1.2 trillion. We need to take that money while we have it now, reinvest it in ourselves, and not into the society that has collapsed us down, taking us out of our communities, and buying up all the areas that are around us, not giving us apartments, not giving us homes, not giving us the loans, not giving us the jobs. We need to start employing ourselves, buying from ourselves, and having a sealed economy, right? Our money needs to be going through our system at least 3 times until this whole entire conversion has been done. Very, very important question. How do we get them to realize that? We get them to realize that through our own action, our beliefs, and what we discuss. We must remain focused on the positive. We must remain focused on where we're going, right? And this is the reason why we start with smaller community redevelopment programs, right? Small redevelopment programs, and this is what's going to begin to start taking over your community. But case in point, I'll take the hardships of Chicago. Now, there's a lot of gang activity out there in Chicago. So these gangs may be able to be turned, maybe they're not. Some of these gangs are working specifically for the system. So you have to know that there's people out there who do not want to get out of the system. We're not trying to convince them to get out of the system. We're trying to educate them and give them the inspiration to do what they know is best for themselves, right? So when you talk about how we get them to realize that, we get them to realize that through the actions that we take by redeveloping what we're doing, right? We have to get out there and start redeveloping. We have to get, and when I say inner, now again, indigenous nations of North America, that includes everybody, everyone, anyone, everybody, anywhere. So then that way they have an understanding as to why they're doing this. Nations that are already developed, like the Kusa Nation, any of the nations that are down there that are developed, that are dealing with FENA, whatever. All of these are indigenous nations, all of them. And that's basically how you get that. Yes, it's about the heart. Yes, it is. My question is, how do we get them to realize that? We're talking about that now. People have literally built their consciousness on those illusions. Yeah, they have. And this is the reason why, we have to take those words moving forward very seriously. We're moving. We're not just, this is not a movement. We're moving forward. We're moving forward. We're moving forward. We're going forward. We're going forward. Not at any cost necessary, because you don't want to sell your soul, right? But we're moving forward. So when you understand that, they're reprogramming our bodies through our food, GMOs, synthetics, they're reprogramming our bodies through our medicine, synthetics, everything they give us is synthetics, vaccinations, a lot of synthetics, they're destroying our immune system, destroying our pineal gland, right? The very way of how we get our consciousness, our thinking, the very secretions that are coming from the pineal gland going into our systems. They're doing a lot of things. This is the reason why we're using the term moving forward. We're moving forward. We're moving forward. No matter what, we're moving forward. So every single one of you that are on here right now, which are quite a bit, every single one of you should immediately begin to start a redevelopment program, reestablishment program in your community, right? In your community. Get a logo. Right? Fill out the forms in triplicate. If you don't have them, email me. I'll email them back, or you're able to get them off the website. We're changing our website up again. So then that way information will be a lot more easier to be accessible to get out. Start that in your community right away, right? And talk about, the doctrine of discovery. You talk about decolonization. And then you say we can have a conversation about reparations. Talk about the leadership that is coming up. And again, when I say leadership, those that are responsible in your community of establishing the lifelines. Because every one of these, and I don't have a picture with me right now, every one of these things that we're doing it so then that way we can make sure that our children will have, and even us, a future that is not going to be as devastating, because there is a storm coming. And this storm is going to be one that is going to be the end of us as beings of people if we don't set the proper foundations. That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We went way over. We'll have more live topics. Go and get a lot of people to subscribe. Because now once I'm asking for subscribers, because once we get over 1,000, I'm able to start doing live events again on the public. So, we spoke at the University of Tampa the other day, had a great turnout, great phenomenal people, great conversation that actually lasted long. It was only supposed to be an hour and a half. It lasted for 2.5 hours, almost 3-hour program. We had great dealings, and we'll talk about that with quote unquote the leadership up there in New York, right? Nassau County, Long Island. We're still dealing with a lot of those people up there. We're still dealing with a lot of people over there in Memphis, New Orleans, Atlanta, people down here in Tampa, Miami, Jacksonville, people up there in the Bronx, New York. Going to be interviewing a doctor. She's going to be talking about the genetics of who we are as beings and people as well, and a lot of things that she's seeing out there. Lots of good things that are going on. So love you guys. Love everyone. Be safe, and reestablish your communities. Send me an email. Right? Email Infinite Universe 0. What is it? 012 at 012 at gmail.com. Infinite Universe. Yeah, let's make sure we got that right, because we don't want anything to be how can I say, go into Infinite Universe. Let's just get into it now. Yeah, Infinite Universe 012 at gmail.com is the new email address that we're going to be putting everybody to. So peace, everyone. We love you, and wellness to everyone. Great grand rising to us all. Start up your reestablishment programs, and if you need help, give me an email, and we will be there to assist you. We will have a seminar on how we are redeveloping communities within a week. All right, I'll have that on there specifically. Get that seminar up there, and email me if you want to be a part of that. Infinite Universe 012 at gmail.com. We'll start advertising that, and we'll start getting people trained up. Peace, everybody. Take care. Have a great day. It is a beautiful day to be alive. And no matter what you're going through, remember, always go through it with a smile, because it's not permanent. We're moving forward, and we're doing it together. End stream.